Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Let's cross now to central London. This is where Clarence Mitchell, a media advisor for Cambridge Analytica, has started speaking. He's responding to the appearance earlier today of Professor Alexander Cogan before the Digital Culture, Media and Sport Committee. Mr. Cogan developed that personality app, if you remember, through which the data of Facebook users was harvested. This is Cambridge Analytica getting their rebuttal in.
Some of which have seen the most pernicious allegations made against the company, which are completely untrue. And I hope from what I say to you, you'll see why. The three areas are, firstly, our licensing of the Facebook data at issue, the GSR data that was received by Cambridge Analytica under a perfectly legitimate and legal contract. Secondly, the work done by the company for the Trump presidential campaign. And thirdly, the company's unsuccessful pitch to Leave.EU before it failed to get the designation as the official Leave group representation. As I say, the first and most pernicious from our point of view of these falsehoods is that we still hold GSR data and have not deleted it, did not delete it when asked to properly by Facebook. That is categorically untrue. As you would have heard in Dr. Cogan's evidence to the DCMS Select Committee earlier today, he was introduced to us by Chris Wiley as someone who'd published on the subject of personality profiling in scientific journals and had created a data sampling methodology that could help us in our work. Cambridge Analytica had no experience in developing Facebook apps, so he seemed like the logical man to talk to. Dr. Cogan made contractual commitments to Cambridge Analytica that the GSR data and had been collected in compliance with data protection legislation. Indeed, the contract demanded that that was the case. And we took those assurances in good faith. The data we licensed from GSR and Dr. Cogan was for up to 30 million respondents in the US only, not 50 million, as has been widely alleged. The 30 million figure was confirmed by Dr. Cogan himself as well today. Cambridge Analytica did not harvest or somehow steal en masse this data. We did not control it, as Chris Wiley has claimed. Cambridge Analytica were not the largest recipient of that GSR data. In fact, again, as Dr. Cogan stated this morning, Chris Wiley's own company, a rival concern set up after he left Cambridge Analytica called Eunoia, had received the largest and widest amount of data. Again, a fact confirmed by Dr. Cogan today. We, of course, were alarmed and concerned when Facebook contacted the company at the end of December 2015, towards the end of the month, to say that Dr. Cogan had apparently acquired this data in breach of its terms and conditions. From that moment on, Cambridge Analytica has cooperated fully with Facebook and immediately set about deleting all of the disputed data from its servers, and then carried out considerable work to make sure that none of its derivatives or any copies elsewhere or backups were left in the system. And sometime later, again, confirmed that to Facebook and gave them a certificate to prove that that was the case. Cambridge Analytica did not share that GSR data with any other party at any other time. Nor has it really been explained in any of the coverage just how ineffectual that data was. We tested the data at issue in 2014 and 2015, before Facebook made its complaint, to see if it was possible to define categories of people with similar personalities in such a way that it might be possible to improve the performance of advertising campaigns. Again, the idea of using data analytics for targeted advertising in both political and commercial campaigns is nothing new. Cambridge Analytica's research showed that the personality types licensed by the Cogan data underperformed when compared to more traditional ways of grouping people by demographics. For example, when they studied the effectiveness of the advertising using those personality types as identified by the Kogan data, as compared to more conventionally targeted advertising, by comparing the number of clicks for every dollar spent, the Kogan data was shown to be virtually useless in that it was only just above random guessing in statistical terms. Certainly less accurate than standard off-the-shelf demographic segments. And Dr. Kogan again himself confirmed today that GSR subsequently discovered that this data was, in his words, highly inaccurate. And therefore, as a result of that testing, Cambridge Analytica did not use the data further. Instead, it moved on to providing more conventional data modelling for donors, persuasion and turnout on Ted Cruz's presidential campaign in 2015. And as a result, Cambridge Analytica decided later to collect its own personality data through marketing research panels, proper interviews with proper consents gained, and the full consent of each respondent, so that it actually had more accurate data than the Kogan data had proved to be. Second, the second area that the company wishes to make its position quite clear today on is the work that it has done on the Donald Trump campaign in 2016. The firm did work for Donald Trump for 5 months. That's only a third of the time that previous digital campaigns for the Obama and Clinton campaigns had had time, and often typically 18 months to 2 years to develop successful campaigns using digital analytics. In this case, the firm worked for Donald Trump's campaign for 5 months, but, and this must be stressed, any suggestion that the GSR Kogan data was used in that campaign is utterly incorrect. Its effective uselessness had already been identified by then, and the profiling, the personality profiling was not used in the Trump campaign. Cambridge Analytica's lack of faith in its utility, in its effectiveness, was just one of the reasons. For the Trump campaign, access to the Republican National Committee data was used, and publicly available data such as the voter registry and commercially available data sources were used. Again, I stress, perfectly normal in modern digital campaigning to identify possibly persuadable voters to receive targeted advertising and mailings. Thirdly, we come to Brexit in the UK, the European referendum. Some publications appear to be determined to link Cambridge Analytica's association with that referendum for their own political reasons. We did pitch to Leave.EU for work with them before the decision to give the nomination as the opposition grouping to vote Leave. But that work was not granted. That pitch was not successful. The reality of what happened is this. We, Cambridge Analytica, have never worked for any of the Brexit campaigns, although, as I say, we did pitch unsuccessfully to both the Brexit and, later, the Remain designations. With Leave.EU, it's true that we had 4 meetings, showed how we might do data analysis for them, and even got so far as submitting a proposal. Much of this has been reported, as you know. But they turned us down, and Aaron Banks and the UKIP party have said repeatedly that no work was done for them, even to get them to the designation stage, let alone during the actual referendum campaigning itself. To suggest that somehow not working on the campaign, not using the Kogan data during the Trump campaign has somehow brainwashed or forced people to vote in a certain way in both America and in Britain is frankly insulting to the electorates. Data science in modern campaigning helps those campaigns, but it is still and always will be the candidates who win the races. Again, the company has been portrayed in some quarters as almost some Bond villain. Cambridge Analytica is no Bond villain. Whilst no laws were broken, We have acknowledged where mistakes have been made, and a full independent investigation being conducted by a QC is being conducted as we speak. And when the board and he are in a position to make details of that investigation clear, they of course will do so. Essentially, we're saying hold us to account by all means, but base it on facts and concrete evidence and not wild speculation based on misinformation, misunderstanding, or in some cases, frankly, an overtly political position. To that end, we're launching today a specific website, cambridgefacts.com, which will outline all of these areas and our official company position on them. Those responses stand as Cambridge Analytica's broad position on all of the areas, but of course I'm happy to take any questions now for a few minutes within reason. If you could just say who you are and where you're from, please. Thank you.
Siobhan Kennedy, Channel 4 News. Where is Alexander Nix? The Wall Street Journal has reported that he has resigned. You said today that he was suspended. What exactly is his status?
Mr Nix, as far as I know, remains suspended as CEO whilst that independent investigation continues. There is also, don't forget, an Information Commissioner's Office investigation ongoing, as well as an Electoral Commission inquiry. Mr Nix is also keen and willing to speak to the DCMS Select Committee again at some stage, but because of those ongoing inquiries, he's taken advice that it would be inappropriate for him to do so or to speak publicly at the moment.
But if Damon Collins says that he's not, as far as he knows, subject to any criminal investigation and he should be free, therefore, to speak, why won't he if he's willing to do so?
I am not here to speak for Mr Nix, but let me finish my answer. Mr Nix, as I understand it, has indicated to the committee that he's more than willing to answer any relevant questions when he is in a position to do so. He has merely asked for a postponement of his evidence, not a cancellation, or, as has been characterised, a refusal to answer the questions.
Just that you appreciate there's a contradiction there, because the man in charge of the committee doesn't believe that there's no reason why he cannot.
Well, all I will say is,
the Data Protection Watchdog has also said there's no reason.
Well, I'm telling you that I have been told that he has indicated to the committee that he is prepared to answer questions when he is in a position to do so. And it is a postponement, not a flat-out refusal or cancellation. But as I say, I'm not here to... He is suspended. It is his future. What happens next is a matter for the independent investigation and the board, and any developments on that will be communicated at the relevant time. I'm here today to talk about some of the facts around some of the issues concerning those allegations I've touched on. Yes?
Alia Ram from the Financial Times.
Alia.
Forget the GSR data, the Facebook data. Were any models derived from the data or developed initially using that data used either after 2015 or in the Trump campaign?
No. As soon as Facebook made it clear they were unhappy with that data set, everything. Initially, it takes time, and I understand GSR did likewise, according to Dr. Kogan today. The company moved swiftly to begin to delete all of the raw data from its servers, and as I say, subsequent work had to be carried out to make sure there were no derivatives, no copies or backups. That was done to Facebook's satisfaction as well, because a certificate was issued.
But I'm not asking about copies or versions or anything. I'm asking about the data was used to inform the development of an advertising, a targeted advertising.
After that, the company moved on to more traditional methodology for both the Trump campaign and, as I say, it wasn't involved in the Brexit referendum in any shape or form. It only pitched for work.
Then why was... So if Cambridge Analytica's position is that no work was carried out for Leave.EU, why did it invoice Leave.EU for work?
Because if you know anything about business, you'll understand that a pitch process, i.e. a bid to get the contract, to get the work, involves a certain amount of time and effort and personnel. And some work, as we've said, was done using some basic UKIP membership data to give them an example of what can be done. That incurred hours and staff time, and a bill was sent through. Effectively, that's what that invoice was for. And as we know, and Mr Banks and the party have confirmed, they chose not to pay it anyway. So no work was done, nothing was paid for, we weren't involved in the referendum in any shape or form, the official campaign. So I'm hard-pressed to understand how that's influencing British voters. Yes, Carol.
Thank you. Carol Calder from The Observer. I put in a set of detailed questions to Cambridge Analytica about how you worked with computer hackers in the Nigerian presidential election and in the St Kitts election. I never had a single response to those. Can you tell me about how the company came to work with hackers who stole personal emails from the now President of Nigeria?
Well, you're stating as fact a lot of things in there, Carol.
Testimony told to me by 9 different sources, yes.
Carol, you're stating as fact a lot of things in there that are the subject of the independent investigation by the QC at the moment. It would be wrong of me to prejudge that, but where there is evidence of wrongdoing, it is being taken extremely seriously, and that investigation will come up with its findings in due course. I cannot and will not prejudge.
So this is an investigation by your own, somebody you've appointed yourself, a paid investigator,
I said,
as opposed to...
I said it's an independent investigator, a QC, and there's no need to shout either. Next question.
Victoria Bird, Sky News. You're speaking for the company, but why is there no one who actually works for the company confident enough to face the media? It's not good enough. Because
the appropriate spokesperson would be the CEO, but because of his position at present, he can't speak. The rest of the team have been absolutely mortified by some of the allegations, particularly around the coverage that we saw on Channel 4 News. They do not recognise the company that they work for, or its practices or its ethics in any of what was said in that particular broadcast. And as a result, they are entirely focused on keeping the company going, reassuring their clients, most of whom are commercial clients, that Cambridge Analytica is a fantastic world-leading data science company with vibrant, intelligent and very creative young people working for it. And as a result, frankly, not many of them have the experience or desire to face the media, and nor were they necessarily privy to decisions that would take it. So in the absence of that, and Mr. Nix's unavailability, they approached me to help them through this particular period, and so here I am, taking questions.
So are you saying that nobody at Cambridge Analytica knew what Mr. Nix was doing? I'm not saying that at all. I'm not saying that at all. But normally in these circumstances, the head of the company is the spokesperson. And in this case, because of him being indisposed, shall we say, I'm here to help you today. And I'm more than happy to take questions. Julian Wheaton, don't you? Why isn't you?
That's Clarence Mitchell in central London, media advisor for Cambridge Analytica, responding to some evidence given earlier today by Dr. Alexander Cogan to the Digital Culture, Media and Sport Committee. In that session, Mr. Cogan was speaking to Damian Collins, who's the chair of that committee. They're investigating all of what you're hearing about right now. So let's speak to Mr. Collins. Thanks for your time joining us. I know you've had a busy day, Mr. Collins, but I just want to ask you, I know you haven't had a chance to hear everything that Mr. Mitchell was talking about, but I'll start with one thing, them saying that in terms of Brexit, they had absolutely no involvement in any way, shape or form, Cambridge Analytica. Does that stack up with what you've been hearing?
Well, we took evidence last week from Brittany Kaiser, who worked for Cambridge Analytica. Her view was that she believed that they did do preparatory work, that they'd expected to be paid for that work. They subsequently weren't paid for it, but as far as she's concerned, that was work that was done. But of course, we're also interested in understanding what relationship there was between SCL, the parent company of Cambridge Analytica, and Aggregate IQ, the work that did work on the official Vote Leave campaign. And there are clearly very close links between those companies, common products that were made and licensed that they used, and that's all part of our inquiry to understand more about that.
I mean, they've published this website, cambridgefacts.com. Have you had a chance to look at that?
Well, I've not yet. I think we'll all be really interested to see whether they are sharing all the facts about Cambridge Analytica. I think we'd all welcome it if they did, or whether this is just the facts they've selected to put on their website. I mean, let's not forget that the issues that they have at the moment are standing by the evidence Alexander Nix gave to the Select Committee and his assertions that they received no data from Alexander Cogan, something that Dr. Cogan absolutely refuted today in front of the Select Committee. Other documentary evidence that has been published that supports what Dr. Cogan has said. And of course, the investigation on Channel 4 showed members of the Cambridge Analytica senior executive team, including Alexander Nix, speaking on camera. No one's ever disputed the recordings of what was said. And a lot of the damage that's been done to the reputation of this company is by the words of the executives themselves.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to Mr. Nix, Mr. Mitchell there saying that he is keen to speak to you. You want him to come and speak to you again. Mr. Nix apparently is very keen to come back to the DCMS committee when he's in a position to do so. You think he is now. Apparently he's not. How do we get around that one?
Well, there's no legal reason why he can't give evidence. He's not been charged with an offence. So the sub judice rules that apply in that situation that would prevent the committee taking evidence don't apply. We've received a letter from Mr. Nix's lawyer, which explains why he doesn't want to give evidence. We know that the Information Commissioner wants to interview him under caution as well. So we're discussing this with the Information Commissioner, and we will make our intentions known when we have made that decision. But we clearly want him to give evidence to us. A lot of the evidence he gave to us has been flatly contradicted. We want to get to the bottom of things and determine whether he may have given misleading answers to a parliamentary committee as part of our inquiry too. So,
with regards to that,
we want this to happen straight away, as soon as possible.
With regards to that, why haven't you issued a formal summons for him yet?
Well, that is something the committee is considering, and we're also discussing that with the Information Commissioner as well, because we know that she wants to interview Alexander Nix very soon as well. So the committee, as you'll appreciate, we've got a lot of evidence sessions to go through at the moment anyway, with the Facebook Chief Technology Officer on Thursday and further sessions planned for next week. So we're keen to do it, and let's do it as soon as we can. And I see no reason why Mr. Nix can't give evidence. I think many people would say, if he's done nothing wrong, why doesn't he just come and tell the truth? And if he did that, how could he possibly incriminate himself?
Just finally, because it's a slightly dodgy line, but I'll try one more. Mr. Mitchell saying that there is a full independent investigation by a QC being conducted within Cambridge Analytica at the moment. Do you trust the conclusions that might come to?
Well, no, I don't. We need to see, I think we need to see the methodology behind that, the evidence they were looking at. What they should do is make themselves open and available to the Information Commissioner. This requires independent investigation of whether the UK's data protection laws were broken. And that's why the Information Commissioner needs to be involved. That's why it was right that she went in to gain access to files and computer records and data sets. And she can produce her own report and, if necessary, recommend further action that should be taken. I think if Cambridge Analytica want to do their own piece of work as well, then that's a matter for them. But that should not be allowed in any way to obstruct the work of the Information Commissioner. She has the force of the law behind her, and that work must take precedence.
OK, Damien Collins, thanks for speaking to us. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Now, Cambridge Analytica, that's the company at the heart of the Facebook data scandal, have categorically denied swaying the US election and outcome of the UK Brexit vote. With us now is Clarence Mitchell, spokesman for Cambridge Analytica, gave a news conference in the last hour or so. Mr. Mitchell, thank you very much for your time. I just want to throw some things that Damien Collins, the chair of the committee that's been hearing evidence, has said to us in the last hour or so. He wants to hear, not from you, he wants to hear from the Cambridge Analytica management. Why aren't they up there addressing the press and you are?
Thanks, Tom, and thank you for the coverage you've given us so far. Mr. Nix, Alexander Nix, is currently suspended, is also the subject of the Information Commissioner's Office investigation and the Electoral Commission as well, and the subject of an internal independent investigation by a QC at Cambridge Analytica. And as a result, he has been advised it would be inappropriate for him to speak out publicly at this stage. He has also told Mr. Collins, I understand, that he is more than happy to answer his committee's questions in due course when he finds himself in a position to be able to too. So he's not refusing. He's not refusing to answer the questions, as has been suggested. He will do so when he can.
I mean, Mr. Collins says that there's absolutely no reason he can't go along today, tomorrow, and do it. There's difference of opinion here, but the committee is saying we welcome him with open arms. So if he's only postponing his appearance, why not just do it this week?
He has been advised, and he has accepted that advice, and it's not for me to query that or discuss it further, given the sensitivity surrounding the various investigations and the fact that he's suspended. If he chooses to, when he chooses to, he will convey that to Mr. Collins and his colleagues.
You've mentioned a full independent investigation by a QC that's being conducted by yourselves. Mr. Collins again saying that he does not trust any conclusions that will come to. You're getting in the way of the independent commissioner's inquiry. Why should anyone trust what conclusion an in-house investigation comes to?
Well, the very word independent is the clue there. It's a QC being done by a QC who is independent.
Being paid by whom?
Cambridge Analytica. And for Mr. Collins to...
Being paid by whom?
For Mr. Collins to prejudge any such
Being paid
inquiry.
by whom, the QC?
The barrister's fees, the QC's fees will be a matter for him to discuss, and certainly not for me on air. But essentially, it will be an independent view by an outside senior lawyer who will assess, and I know is assessing, all of the areas of allegation and accusation.
But he's being paid by Cambridge Analytica.
Misunderstanding, misinformation, or frankly, a political agenda in some cases. But forgive me, sorry, what was the question?
But the QC, he's being paid by Cambridge Analytica, yes or no?
The point is that an investigation is underway.
So the company
remains more than willing and very happy to cooperate with all of the other investigations as well, the ICO, the Electoral Commission and any other regulatory body that wants answers to their questions. The ICO, frankly, didn't even need to raid Cambridge Analytica's offices the other week, as they did very visibly for when one presumes media consumption. Cambridge Analytica talked to them last year and would have welcomed them in and answered their questions in normal office hours. But as I say, the company takes its data protection responsibilities very seriously indeed.
OK, didn't quite get an answer to that one, but we'll move on. You've been working on this, correct me if I'm wrong, for about a week or so. You could be described as a hired gun when Alexander Nix and some of the other management decide not to front up. How do you feel about being up there, representing a company described by the SNP's former digital media strategist as a bunch of cowboys?
Well, I'll answer your substantive question in just a moment. On the SNP point, I would say that that was quite insulting and, frankly, ill-advised of him to say that. Cambridge Analytica are not a bunch of cowboys or snake oil salesmen, as I gather he's also said. The idea from the SNP was somehow that a consultant assessed the company and dismissed them as such. Well, I can tell you there were at least 2 SNP representatives that had one meeting in London and phone calls, followed up by further phone calls and emails with a view to a business relationship beginning to help them with their data analysis. They were very keen to have that association with Cambridge Analytica. It was only the timing of the European referendum that put the project on hold. So for the SNP to portray us as cowboys, well, we're cowboys that keep phone and email records, and it's really unfair for them to begin to characterise us that way. To answer your substantive question, how do I feel about it? I am more than happy to represent a company which has committed no wrongdoing, broken no laws, which entered into a perfectly legitimate legal contract with a supplier of the data that's at issue, and then cooperated fully, swiftly and effectively with Facebook themselves to get rid of all that data as requested, and then give them a certificate to that effect. It's very unfortunate that some of the coverage recently has sought to portray them as somehow some sort of Bond villain. Well, Cambridge Analytica is no Bond villain.
Well, I mean, some of the coverage in defence is video of Alexander Nix telling everyone all the sort of Bond villain-esque things that they can do. That is the conclusion that's been brought to by video footage of him saying those things.
Tom, I couldn't agree more, and I can tell you that the staff in CA's offices, in Cambridge Analytica's office, when they saw that particular footage, which was just a very small part of some 4 meetings, I might add, but when they saw that footage, they were absolutely horrified. That appeared to be blatant exaggeration, overzealous salesmanship on the part of Mr. Nix.
Sounds like a sackable offence rather than a suspension offence.
Any question about Mr. Nix's future rests with the board, as it would with any company, and I'm not here to predict or to talk about that. But what I can tell you is the staff were horrified. It did not reflect the company they work for, the ethos, the ethical underpinning, and they certainly wouldn't have been party to any such illegal or questionable or unethical activities as was being suggested apparently as part of that Channel 4 sting. So, you know, where mistakes have been made, we are happy to accept them and learn from them and move on. That's what the independent investigation is about. But I stress again, no laws have been broken, nor did Cambridge Analytica use the disputed data on the Donald Trump campaign in 2016, as has again been intimated in many outlets, and it certainly didn't use anything like that in the Brexit referendum because it didn't work on the actual referendum. It pitched for some work with Leave.EU, it didn't get it, it wasn't paid for it. So how that can lead to people being influenced somehow mysteriously by data manipulation or some sort of brainwashing, frankly, the facts just don't back it up, and it's a nonsense. And that's what we're trying to begin to say from
those
today.
are things that I imagine Damien Collins very keen to hear in person at the committee, what you said in that news conference today, indeed. But I just want to double-check. Cambridge Analytica, your position today, you're standing by the fact that you received only 30 million individuals' data from GSR and Alexander Kogan. Facebook said upwards of 87 million. There is a contradiction there. You're sticking by the 30 million?
We are indeed 30 million, and we're very happy that Dr. Kogan confirmed that figure himself today. Much of what Dr. Kogan absolutely tallies with our position, even though there was obviously a dispute between GSR and Cambridge Analytica over the data once it became clear that Facebook were unhappy and wanted it removed. But nevertheless, 30 million data, the data of 30 million people was shared under a perfectly legal, legitimate contract for legal, political marketing purposes, but the 87 million figure is a matter for Facebook to quantify and explain. But as far as Cambridge Analytica is concerned, we agree with Dr. Kogan, it was 30 million.
OK, and despite being advised not to do so yet, we will see Mr Nix in front of that committee?
When he is in a position to speak freely, I'm sure he will be happy to answer their questions. As I understand it, he has indicated to Mr Collins that he is seeking a postponement, given his present position and the various inquiries that are underway, and that once that situation is resolved, however it is, he will be happy to speak to the committee then.
Mr Mitchell, thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
For 6 weeks now, Cambridge Analytica has been at the very centre of a global political storm over how data was harvested from millions of Facebook users. Today, for the first time since the scandal broke, they allowed questions from the press 2 hours after an academic at the centre of the data scandal gave evidence to MPs.
6 weeks after the Cambridge Analytica scandal broke and the company finally emerges to make its first public appearance. Or rather, this man.
Afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
A PR consultant hired by the firm did it for them.
The reason that we've called this news conference today is to begin to counter some of the unfounded allegations and, frankly, the torrent of ill-informed and inaccurate speculation that has surrounded the company.
Cambridge Analytica has been in crisis mode since this programme broadcast undercover footage of its chief executive, Alexander Nix, boasting of the firm's dirty tricks.
I mean, it sounds a dreadful thing to say, but these are things that don't necessarily need to be true, as long as they're believed.
And after revelations, it had harvested nearly 90 million Facebook profiles for use in political campaigns. Mr Nix, though, was nowhere to be seen at today's press conference. Where is Alexander Nix? The Wall Street Journal has reported that he has resigned. You said today that he was suspended. What exactly is his status?
Mr Nix, as far as I know, remains suspended as CEO whilst that independent investigation continues. The rest of the team have been absolutely mortified by some of the allegations, particularly around the coverage that we saw on Channel 4 News. They do not recognise the company that they work for, or its practices or its ethics in any of what was said in that particular broadcast.
Mr Nix has since gone to ground, and last week he pulled out of a second appearance in front of MPs. Today, instead, the committee heard from Dr. Alexander Kogan, the Cambridge professor who harvested the Facebook data on behalf of Cambridge Analytica. He's been branded a liar by Facebook for violating its policies, but told MPs today he's just the scapegoat.
In my view, Facebook's comments are PR crisis mode, right? I mean, I think I don't believe they actually think these things, because I think they realize that their platform has been mined left and right by thousands of others. I think they realize all this, but PR is PR, and they're trying to manage the crisis, and it's convenient to point the finger at a single entity and try to paint the picture this is a rogue agent.
Dr. Kogan also claimed that Mr. Nix himself had misled MPs about its use of the Facebook data harvested by Dr. Kogan's company, Global Science Research.
Did you mislead Parliament over the Facebook
Absolutely
issue?
not.
I'll just read to you the questions that I asked Alexander Nix and the answers he gave, and could you tell me whether you think you agree with the answers that he gave? So I said to him, does any of your data come from Global Science Research? And he said no.
That's a fabrication.
Okay. So I said,
maybe not now, but
they have not supplied you with data or information. He said no.
Total fabrication.
Not true, Cambridge Analytica said today.
Data analysis for better targeting of advertising or campaigning messaging is perfectly legitimate. It is not the Bond-like brainwashing that has somehow, through the coverage in recent weeks, has been allowed to develop, and that's what we're trying to correct today.
Siobhan Kennedy reporting.